This is the Silencio 352, a micro ATX case from Cooler Master. Equipped with noise dampening foam and opaque side panels, this enclosure takes a no-nonsense approach to silent computing. But is it actually any good? And is this a budget case worth buying? Join me for the full review to find out. Hey, what is up guys, and welcome back to another case review. Here we have the Cooler Master Silencio 352. This is a micro ATX case. It's priced more towards the budget side of things at around about £60 here in the UK, and it's a case that's all about minimalist looks and silent computing. Getting the case out of the box is fairly straightforward. There's not really too much to talk about here. It's pretty much just packaging as usual, and you're left with a case that doesn't have too much style about it. It's very reserved, and it's going to be just as happy as a gaming PC as it is in an office as an editing PC. Whether you like the style, well, that's going to be entirely down to you. Personally, I would like to have something that's a little bit more out there. But on the inside, you will find that this has sound dampening foam, and this is all over the case on all of the side panels, and it does do a very good job of dampening your components, but of course it depends what you want to put in there. You also find a removable fan filter in the front section, although this isn't toolless and you have to use a screwdriver to remove it, which is a little bit old-fashioned. Also on the front panel you'll find an SD card reader, headphone and microphone jacks, 2 USB 3.0, 1 USB 2.0, a power button, and then a reset switch. The SD card is particularly useful, and this definitely makes it very useful if you want to use this as an editing PC. As we move around to the side of the case, both side panels are easily removed with the pre-supplied thumb screws, and the insides feature sound dampening foam and a small raised area for better cable management. The front section of the case is easily removed, and this is where you can access the front fan mounts. Note that all the mounts on the case are only 120mm, not 140mm like we found on the Fantex P400S. The case does come with 2 fans supplied as standard, one on the front and one on the rear, but you can fit a total of 4 fans in total, 2 at the front, 1 up top and 1 on the rear, and if you do want to use a radiator you can mount a 240mm on the front. The top section of the case is fairly uncluttered, though you will find a removable fan cover, and this attaches and detaches magnetically, as well as providing some sound dampening properties if you choose to use it. The underside of the case features a removable dust filter, and this easily attaches and reattaches. And the case in general, it's a fair build quality. I mean, you can tell that it is a budget case, but generally speaking, it's pretty good for the price. I mean, it compares fairly well with some of its competition. Removing the other side panel once again reveals more sound dampening foam, and putting it to one side you can start to take a look at the interior of the case. And it's not too bad for a micro ATX case at all. It's not the smallest case out there by any stretch of the imagination, but it's fairly light, it's fairly airy. It's a shame that there aren't any form of cable management grommets, and especially at the top section of the case there's really not much room for cable management at all. Everything you need to put the system together comes supplied in a single plastic bag, and all the screws do look a little bit similar, and you do have to install your own standoffs, which is a little bit strange in a case that's micro ATX, and I definitely would prefer to see them pre-installed. Elsewhere on the case you'll find that your cable management options are fairly limited. We don't have any grommets, and that is kind of fair on a budget case with no window, but nonetheless it's definitely not the easiest case to manage, and I found that I was having to stow cables and route cables through places that they shouldn't necessarily go through, and I don't think Cooler Master spent that much time deciding where cable management options should be. As we move on to the build process itself, there wasn't really too much to complain about here. Installing the power supply was very simple, and there's plenty of room to stow a non-modular power supply's horrible trail of cables between that and the hard drive cage. The hard drive cage supports 1 SSD or 2.5-inch drive on the top, as well as 2 3.5-inch drives down the bottom, but note this is not toolless installation. If you want to use SSDs, then you're probably best off using the 2 2.5-inch drive mounts in the middle of the case, but if you do want to route cables you will have to give up one of these drive mounts, so you might want to be a little bit messy. A small feature that I do appreciate is the 2 Molex adapters you get with each case fan, as this means that if you have an older generation system you can still hook the fans up successfully. And overall my system was hooked up fairly successfully. There wasn't too much in here. I mean, it was a simple AMD system with 1 SSD, but I have discovered a few strange design choices. I mean, I understand why there's a 5 5¼ drive bay and a 3¼ drive bay on the front of the case, but why is there nowhere to route my CPU cable round the back of the motherboard tray? Why do I have to have it dragging over everything else? And why do the front panel connections, if you want to route them round, why do they have to take up a 2.5-inch drive slot? Once you start adding up all the things like this, you definitely start to notice that the case building experience isn't quite up to scratch when you compare it to some of its competition. But having said that, it's definitely light and roomy, and if you've never built a PC before, there's definitely plenty of room to fit everything that you want in. Even if you're going to use a very long graphics card, I don't think you're going to run into too many issues. But the issues unfortunately don't stop, and when we move around to the other side of the case, when we start talking about closing the side panel, there's just no space to put any of the cables, and even though the side panels do have a small amount of raised area, it's just very clear that this isn't a case you can really do some fancy cable management work, as if you try and put the side panel on, even with a good job of cable management, it is incredibly difficult. There is definitely no case that I've ever used that has been this difficult to close the side panel on with so little in it. But this is very much a PC that is all about silence, and on that respect it does do a good job. The case fans that come supplied are fairly quiet as well. Once you tune them within software, you're definitely not going to hear this, but of course it depends on what you put in the system. I do like the fact that you've got an SD card reader though, and the front I/O is definitely very applicable to video editors or professional workers that need to quickly access the SD slot or use one of the drive bays included in the front of the case. But overall, this is definitely a case that has a niche, but for most people it's one I'm struggling to recommend. Unless you need that 5¼ drive bay, or you need the 3¼ drive bay, or you need to have an SD reader built into the case itself, there are just other options that are easier to build in, just have more modern features, and are just generally speaking a better case. It's a shame, as if you are after something that's fairly plainly designed, fairly minimalist, then this definitely will do the job, no doubt about it, and once you've built in it, it's going to be a decent case. It's just on balance, there are better alternatives out there. So there we go. A massive thank you to you guys for checking out this video. If you've enjoyed it, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe for more videos just like this. A massive thank you to Cooler Master for providing this review unit, and of course to Corsair for sponsoring the channel as always. Any questions, and let me know what cases you want to see reviewed, do that all down in the comments section down below, as well as at PC Centric on Twitter. A massive thank you once again, and I'll see you in the next video.